And here we are. I'm Adam Gold. This is the Canes Corner podcast, sort of the evening after edition. And oh my gosh, look who it is. It's Sara Civian.
Hi,
So
I'm nostalgic.
I'm nostalgic. All right. I want to get all this right. First of all, Bleacher Report, right?
Mhm.
At BR underscore on ice. I have
Open
that
ice.
right. Did I get that right?
Almost. Open ice.
Open ice. My fault.
Close.
Yeah. My bad. Look, I gave the wrong game time for tonight during the end of the Hurricanes game. I said it was 7:00 tomorrow. It's 4:00 tomorrow. I have to get dressed. And also the Too Many Men podcast, part of the Lebitard podcast family, superstar at @2_much_man on Twitter for the podcast, the one and only Sara Civian at Sara Civ. First of all, man, how have you been? I have not seen or spoken to you since before the season started. How's life in the big city? And you're like in multiple big cities. How are things going?
I know, right? Things are great. It's been awesome to spend more time. I say I'm in the big city. I am in the suburbs in my parents' basement. So I thought that I would dread that, but I actually never want to leave. Like you get a nice home cooked meal every day. They're
Right.
babying me. It's nice to be home. Nice to be doing more of a like national coverage type of thing. That's new for me.
Sure.
So just trying it out. But I do miss the Canes and you.
Well, it's been a stretch here, Sara. So I know you said on Twitter earlier that you fixed the power play. It was temporary. They scored on their first 2 power play goals. Let's just deal with the game. You were there. So let's deal with the game first, and then we'll talk more broadly about the league, and I talked to Greg Wyshynski today for Stormwatch, and I have no idea what to make of the season of the year so far around the league. It's been a very strange year. So we'll talk about that at the end of this, but let's just spend a few minutes on the game. Carolina got off to a great start. And I can't help but think that it started getting away from them at the end of the first period when it was a parade to the penalty box. And for about 4.5 minutes, Carolina was shorthanded. Boston didn't score on those power plays, but I just thought they gained their footing in the game there.
They did. Yeah, they started to pick up momentum. This Boston team, I mean, I wouldn't feel bad about taking it to overtime with them. They have just been finding ways to win. They just broke an NHL record for amount of wins at home to start out the season with 12. So I'm going to say I wouldn't be too down on the Canes for that. But at the same time, yeah, the penalties were pretty careless both ways today, though. I thought that was pretty even.
I agree. Look, I know Hurricanes fans think the world is against them, in which I get you're predisposed to that when you're a fan. So that doesn't bother me that the Canes feel like they got screwed on the Krejci should have been in the box because he high-sticked Aho in the face-off circle. And then Krejci goes down and scores at the end of the period. I get it. I get all of that. I didn't see it that way. I saw that call as, they could call it. But, it's going to happen to Carolina at some point, and Carolina's not going to want it called. And, of course, Hurricanes fans will assume that it will be called. But the officiating didn't bother me today. The waved off, then waved on goal didn't bother me today, other than it. Like, I think it's a good goal. Mm-hmm. But if the directive from the league, as they were talking about on TV, is that it has to be an egregious mistake to overturn the call on the ice, well, I think it's a 50-50 play either way. So nothing egregious. But again, I think they got the call right. I think it's a good goal. But that's why Hurricanes fans don't always like me, because I don't speak to them.
Well, that's the exact trouble with these goaltender interference things. It's like it is so ambiguous that I do think by the definition of what it should be, that was the right call. But with the overturn thing, why would they even say, why would they make that the rule that if it's not egregious, they're not going to turn it over? Then you just enter more room for more discrepancy and more discussion. I had no problem with that. And I think you got to find a way to win other than that situation.
100%, 100% true. We see it in all sports. The call at the end of the game is the one that everybody points to, as opposed to, well, there were 5 other opportunities for you to change the game one way or the other. and this is where I go back with the Hurricanes dominating the first period. You win, you're up 2-0, and you get a 4-minute double minor on Pasternak for apparently doing some dental work on Kokaniemi.
Yeah.
He lost a tooth, which that's, it happens for hockey players. And Carolina doesn't do much with the first power play. And then early in the second one, Svechnikov takes the interference penalty. And then Drury takes the penalty. And now the game, you've lost control of it. Like they almost got out of the second period 2-0. That would have been enormous. But that goal at the end of the period changed it. But it can't come down to this. I don't know how many times you have seen Carolina this year, but over the last 2 weeks, probably longer than 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, the offense really hasn't been good. Well, I shouldn't say that. The offense has been good. The scoring part of the offense hasn't been good. You've seen this before. Create chances and not be able to finish them, right?
Yeah. I immediately go to, well, Nosen is on the power play. I feel like that's kind of like, okay, like I'm going to cut them some slack because they have some injuries, I guess. I don't know. I immediately go to Teuvo Teravainen, right? He's kind of the puzzle piece that puts everything together when things aren't clicking. So it makes sense that he's out.
Well, no Teuvo Teravainen. Like this is what people are having a hard time remembering, I guess. So we're now 21 games into the season. Teuvo Teravainen has contributed 0 goals. Seth Jarvis has 3. Max Pacioretty, who was supposed to be part of the solution to the offense, also has 0 goals. Well, I mean, he's hurt, but still no goals. Yeah. Andre Kasha, for whatever that's worth, the Hurricanes finally got their man. He played the opening night, was kind of nondescript, playing on a fourth line, but he played opening night. And he's out. He's been out since. He has no goals. Brett Pesce's playing on the power play for whatever. They don't really have a second quarterback of the power play, so Pesce's doing it. I'd rather Slavin do it, to be honest. But he has no goals. Stepan Stasny, not only does he have no goals, he hadn't been good. Jack Drury's now played 9 games. I think 9 games or 10 games, no goals. It's a lot of guys with no goals on this team. And they're second in the NHL in scoring chances at 5-on-5 scoring chances in high danger areas. And they're like 29th or worse in finishing those chances. That's a bad combination. That's why everybody's frustrated.
When the bounces aren't going your way, do you think it's definitely a case of that? Do you think there's something more to it?
I don't know that it's bounces. I had a conversation with Tom Dundon after the season last year, and he was convinced that they were just unlucky. And I think you can make an argument for that, but I don't really attribute what happened in the playoffs and their offense going away to being unlucky. I don't attribute this to being unlucky. I think that there are certain elements right now. Too many good players are not contributing goals. And I don't find that. I think it's unlucky that maybe Sebastian Aho doesn't have more goals or Martin Necas doesn't have more goals. But they're each over a point a game. Nobody's going to complain that they haven't been doing their part. But the other guys, I don't think it's been unlucky. I think Carolina is good at creating chances and not good at finishing chances. And we've sort of been here for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to change that other than they don't do a lot of really good work between the circles below the hash marks. That's not where they operate at their best. And that's where goals are scored in this league, but they're not. Rod probably needs to mix up what he did today by spreading out Stahl, Martinook, and Fost.
Yeah.
That probably needs to be something that that this team needs going forward. I don't know. It's been a different vibe. It would be interesting if you were around these guys. I think they really like each other, but I'm not sure on the ice. And you might be right about Teuvo Teravainen, that it's all about Teuvo, which it could be. But he started the season so poorly.
Yeah, that's true. I would also say I don't know why I'm being like so optimistic, but I
You
would
should be.
remind everyone that Aho always starts slow. Even like obviously he's had some good chances that are not going in, but he is always pretty bad in October on the scoreboard with like goals. Then he gets it going. So I would say wait for that. Have a little patience, but at the same time, what are we hoping for? Like, do we want this team to go to the Stanley Cup, or do we want them to just make the playoffs again? Because they will definitely have to step up in terms of star power. But that's what the deal was last year, right? There's like sometimes there's just not that one ace.
It's funny. Last year was probably their year. They didn't believe so. Mm-hmm. Which is why they only added Max Domi at the deadline. Now, Max Domi did get them out of the first round series with the performance in Game 7 against Boston. But Max Domi otherwise did basically nothing for Carolina. I mean, he just fit right in. Like they were in a scoring funk, and Max Domi didn't change that. Mm-hmm. The year before, they did nothing at the deadline. And that's Carolina has to figure out what they're going to be. They don't have cap room, so it's going to be the same. Got to be creative like they did last year. I think they need help on their fourth line. I mean, first of all, they need Teravainen and Pacioretty on the ice. And we're 2 months away from Pacioretty coming back. Teuvo just left the game midway through. I think it was Toronto. And we haven't seen him since. So he hadn't practiced. He was on the ice a couple of times, I think, with Justin Williams, but we haven't seen him. So do you have faith in the front office at making a splash at the deadline?
I don't know. Like the cap space is a pretty big deal. I do think they're more of a off-season move-making team. It depends what moves are out there to even make. I mean, there are some big splashes people could go for in a trade. I don't know. I mean, imagine Patrick Kane on the team. That's not going to happen, but I do think that would be fun. I don't think it's possible, though. I think they've kind of handcuffed themselves as they've had to. I like the Burns move. I like kind of all the offseason moves, but it just stinks, and it's so unfortunate that Pacioretty got hurt. And I don't know. I'm proud of Natchez for breaking out. When it all clicks at once, it'll be good. But like, can you rely on something all clicking at once?
No, that's why there's safety in numbers, right? Yeah. So in the beginning, the first 10 games of the season, I think Carolina got out 8-2-1, and Natchez and Aho and Svechnikov were just flying. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they've all been way more good than not. I mean, I think Natchez has been great. I think Aho, for the most part, has been great, and Svechnikov is doing exactly what you expect him to do. They just haven't gotten enough out of their others. That second line. You remember in the playoffs last year, they couldn't get the Trocheck line to essentially take advantage of their matchup. And Vinny had a pretty good postseason statistically, so I'm not really blaming him here. But that line didn't dominate against, especially even at home, against third pairs and bottom six forwards, because the Aho line and the Stahl line were taking care of the top two. They didn't dominate against the bottom. And that was that was mostly Natchez and Svechnikov. And now when you've got, for the Kokoniemi, whatever line he's been on, they haven't dominated their opposition. They did early, but that was just Natchez and Svechnikov, and now they're split up. They're on separate lines. I think they'll eventually get back to it. I don't know. There's no answers for this. It's a stupid sport.
I know. Sometimes it really is like we need to zoom out a little bit and go by like 10 games by 10 games. Justin Williams used to always tell me that, like, look at the streaks, what's happening. As long as there's not, like, around the league, as you said, it's going crazy. St. Louis lost 8, won 7. The Flyers were started off strong, and what is it, a 10-game losing streak? Like, there's win streaks with the Devils and the Bruins, obviously. But I do think a lot of it comes down to having at least 2 really good lines. Like, I'm thinking about Dallas right now. I mean, Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin have been really good on top of that first line with Jason Robertson that has been one of the best lines in hockey. Then you got the Bruins. They have two really, really solid lines. And I think it's just not enough to have one good line these days.
No, and that's why I actually think that ultimately by separating Stahl, Martinook, and Fost, who are going to go through stretches where as well as they play, they're not going to score. It needs to happen, especially if that second line is not producing. I know Rod has given Jack Drury a chance to play up in the lineup, and I don't think he's played all that well yet. I wouldn't be surprised if ultimately when Teuvo Teravainen came back, if they didn't send Drury back down, but I'd like to see them keep him up here.
Yeah, that stinks. There's so much pressure, and it's not necessarily his fault that like maybe he should be a fourth line center and have like all these defensive skills, but it's not enough for a team that at the caliber that the Canes think they are and should be at.
I mean, it's possible that the Canes are not that caliber. I mean, I hate to bring this up on a Canes Corner podcast, but they have won the last two divisions. They were really good for, I mean, the first 2/3 of last year, they were great. They weren't as good the last third. You know, their points percentage dipped in the last third of the season from where they were over 70%. They ended up right around 70, but ultimately, you know, for a good chunk of the last quarter of the season, they were at about 640 or so. And maybe that's really where they are, which is not far off from where they are. And they're on essentially a 5-game losing streak, but they gotten points in 4 of those 5. That's a pretty good losing streak if you're going to be on.
You know what? I don't think it's as bad as some people. At least I remember scrolling through Twitter the other day when it was like that comeback win where it was 3-0 and then 3 or they lost, but it ended up
they didn't lose in overtime.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think it's that bad. Like Rod always says, look at how they're playing, and I think like the pieces are there. I think you can't have a panic attack when they're getting points still and like they're scraping away at this tough time in the season. I kind of want them to focus on defense more. If that, like, I wish the goaltending, I wish Freddie was healthy. It concerns me that he is not healthy again. When I look at last year's playoffs, I mean, it was a lack of scoring, but it was also like Freddie wasn't in net. So I would have loved to see that. And I just feel like maybe they should play to their strengths of defense.
The defense really hasn't been the problem. It's interesting. You saw Kochetkov live today. I mean, I thought he was their best player today.
Yeah.
And I think he's let a couple of goals in that really weren't great to let in. Actually, the overtime winner in Minnesota, I thought he guessed that Goligoski was going back to the middle and sort of leaned and left the post open. But for the most part, he's gotten deked on a couple of breakaways, but he's been really good. They gave him a 4-year contract 2 days ago. They signed it. Oh yeah. So next year is the last year of his entry-level deal. And then he gets 4 years at $2 million per. Like that could end up being an absolute steal if it works out where he is their absolute number one. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes again tomorrow afternoon because Ronta's kind of nicked up, although he's available to back up. Oh. Yeah, exactly. And I was worried about the goaltending going into the season. I said it. I'm like, I'm not 100% on board with what they've got. And I thought they needed a veteran in the AHL that they could rely on because I thought that Kochetkov needed a full year in the A to really get up to speed. But he had his moments last year where he was great. And I can't complain about really any of the 6 games, I think, right now that he's played so far this year. So, I mean, maybe the time is now for him.
Yeah, I think it's important to not let his confidence go down because he's at his best when he's confident, but that makes stupid mistakes happen when you're young too, right? Like the goals you were describing are kind of a result of him being really confident and like guessing the wrong thing. But you know what? Yep. I'd take that if that's going to be your number one down the line and just like, okay, suck it up at this part of the season. They put a win streak together at the beginning of the season. So, okay, let's figure out where we're at right now and kind of let him do his thing. Now they have to start reining it in a little bit more. The vibes are getting a little too off right now.
Yeah, but again, I mean, as poorly as they've scored, again, I don't think it's as poorly as they've played, as poorly as they've scored.
Yeah.
10, 6, and 5. I mean, they've lost 11, but they've gotten points out of 5 of them. Real quick. I mean, I don't look. Somebody texted me today. Pardon me for kind of losing my train of thought here. Somebody texted me today and said, "Is Rod Brindamore on the hot seat?" And I understand why anybody would think that, because the team was thought to be one of the best, if not the best in the East, and they're clearly not. So therefore, it's a Rod problem. We have fans who say they've clearly tuned out the message. I don't know, based on people you don't sense anything like that, do you? Because I certainly don't.
Absolutely not. I'll tell you about a former. I've never really told this story. I love, now that I've left, I can kind of like tell my little stories. But like,
okay, yeah.
A former Hurricanes player that's not on the team anymore gave me his honest opinion of Rod a year or two ago, and he was just like, "Listen, I was kind of scared at him at first, and he was a little rigid at first. It was like one of his first years coaching. He's like, but then when he loosened up, he kind of gave us so much trust, and like we understood him, and he understood us. And there's like I've never been coached by a coach like that, where you really felt like you kind of had the room to mess up, and he had your back, but at the same time, like he yells at them and goes hard at them. Like, it's hard to describe. He has a really good balance of those things. And you know what? Like, you hear that all the time in all these different ways that these players say it. But I think one of the most like eye-opening things Rod has ever said was when I asked him last year about, I even forget what the question was, but he said, like, maybe we don't have that superstar. And it's like, he goes so hard for the Canes and the front office, and you don't really see coaches doing that much, right? Like thanking Tom, thanking Don and everybody, but he does that so much that we might lose sight sometimes of the decisions that they make. That's not Rod, right? Like there's only so much Rod can do. He gets the most out of these players. Maybe the players aren't at the level that they need to be sometimes, and there's like nothing else. He's like, what do you want him to do? Like give them smelling salts? Like there's nothing else he can really do. I'm curious about your opinion there, because I might be going too hard for him when it could be something in the middle, but I don't see what else he could do.
No, I think you're 100% correct. Rod coaches players the way Rod wanted to be coached. He trusts them almost to a fault. I would argue that Rod, and sometimes it's because he doesn't have the options, right? He doesn't have, there's not 4 guys or 3 guys on his bench that he can go to that are potentially better than somebody who's on the ice. So he really doesn't have that opportunity. But Rod is patient to a fault, probably, with his players. He gives them the opportunity to battle through problems. I mean, you covered the team as, you know, when during the Rod Brindamore era, like I have. How many players has he benched? 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the game in Florida. Natchez didn't take a shift,
yeah.
right? Didn't take a shift for like the last 10 minutes of the game. And then he forgave him and sent him out in overtime, and Natchez was part of the goal. So Rod, it's not a messaging problem. What you said was the story that Rod said, basically when Rod said, maybe we don't have those type of superstars. Isn't that true? I mean, if you made a list of the best players in the league, how far do we go down the list before we get to either Aho or Svechnikov?
It's something I've realized by like having more, you get so locked into your team if you're covering it or if you're a fan, right? You're so immersed in all this that now that I've zoomed out a little bit, like sometimes there's nothing you can do because there's a David Pastrnak or there's a Brad Marchand, both on the same team, right? Or there's I don't know, there's just superstars around. McDavid can't make his team good, but he's so dominant every single night. There's so many good players in the NHL that it's like, yes, people should be paying more attention to the Ahos and the Slavins of the world. But at the same time, there's people that are better than them, and it's not their fault, but it's like there's just so many elite players.
Yeah, it's an incredible league. The league has probably never been this good. I mean, I grew up watching hockey in the late 70s, mid 70s, and I've watched it my whole life. And in terms of across the league, there's never been this talent. Ever has there been this talent that we have today. There were talented players. I mean, Edmonton in the early 80s, the Islanders in the late 70s, some of those Colorado teams, I mean, Detroit. But the league was, all the talent was basically concentrated in just a few areas. I mean, there's so much talent across the league. It's incredible how many great players there are, right? I mean, just incredible players there are.
And for me, it's a lot about the consistency, right? It's like we all know Aho, Fetch, and company are very good, and they can be good, and we see those flashes of like elite. But then there are people that every single night are just scoring. Like you're not surprised. You're surprised if they stop. So it's kind of
right.
Like, when will the Canes get that one player? And I think it could be Fetch. I do think, and he's been awesome at the beginning of this season, but he's young still. And then the window is happening right now. So it's just kind of tricky. It's like really on the nose of, okay, is their playoff window happening when their star is becoming the star?
I think they have this year and next year inside the window.
Yeah.
And it depends on a couple of things. It depends on what the salary number ultimately is for not so much Aho. He's going to go up, but he's not going to go up that much. I think it depends on what the number is for Teravainen. It depends on what the number is for Jarvis. It depends on what the number is for Slavin and Pesci. And I guess to a lesser extent, Shea. It would certainly help if Kochetkov is their goalie. Because if you're paying your number one goalie $2 million a year and you can back him up with a veteran at 1.5, you're way ahead of the game if you're paying your goaltending $4 million a year or less.
That was a good move.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I've been critical. Look, I was super critical of the Kokoniemi contract for a number of reasons. One, that he didn't do anything last year that should have made you believe that an 8-year contract was warranted. Forget about the money. The 8 years is the problem. And he hasn't done anything this year so far. But, jury's still out. He's still only 22. But it's hard to find a problem with this contract other than if he's just a backup, then you have this backup for 4 years. But if he's just a backup, then he's just a backup. And $2 million for a backup that can be good is fine. So it's a really no-brainer. Frankly, he should fire his agent. I mean, if he becomes the number one goaltender now,
I know.
Yeah, he should fire his agent.
Especially with the cap raising.
Right. It's a terrible contract for him.
Yeah.
So which makes it even better for the Hurricanes front office. They like it when players sign terrible contracts for them, which I guess every front office is about. So tell me, Sarah, what team other than the Bruins, who were not supposed to be this good but are great, other than Boston, who has really surprised you around the league?
I mean, the Devils are the easy answer, but that's the answer to me. It's just like, what an unbelievable streak that was. And I guess for me, it shows you the value of patience, right? Because we've been complaining about like Hershiser, Bratt, who's the other, Jack Hughes, about when will they do this? When will they do this? And then they're clicking now, right? It's like, okay, these young guys need a few more years. And then obviously, I think not being afraid to take a chance and go a different route with goaltending and like pulling away from Blackwood has been really good for them. And I think that's something the Canes have been good at too, right? Like kind of running with the hot guy and knowing when to do that. That is such a crucial thing. And then what else with them? Dougie Hamilton. How about that? We'll see what happens. Well. Yeah, he has that. I mean, I'm shocked by how
It's
well
okay
they're
to say
doing.
that. It's
Yeah.
okay to say that to Hurricanes fans. Dougie Hamilton, he's a good player, right? That's always been, for me, the funny part is that I can't ever remember saying that Dougie was bad. I mean, they had to make a decision. They would have taken Dougie Hamilton back if the number was right for them, but nine a year was not right for them,
Yeah, and
and
I
that's
like
fine.
Burns. I like Burns on this team a lot more than I thought I would.
Yeah, look, I actually think he's played a lot better than people give him credit.
Yeah.
I think he's been very good. He wasn't good against Arizona. The first 2 goals were on him.
Okay, I didn't watch that game.
Yeah. See, we have to live this every day.
Yeah.
He made a mistake at the blue line. First shot of the game goes in. Slavin also made a mistake, which is, it's fair to say that Jacob Slavin is not perfect, as good as he is. And then Burns failed to clear the puck out of the zone for the first goal in the third period that made it 2-0. But other than that, I think Brent's been really good. It took him a while, first maybe 8 to 10 games. It was more mechanical, but he's a much better player now than he was at the start of the season. Yeah, Brent's fine. They have to figure out the third pair. I like Jalen Chatfield. Calvin Hahn was good today.
I can't believe he's back. I was watching the game today. I was like, oh my God, it's Calvin Hahn.
I asked him if he was moving back into his house.
Oh my God, the revolving door with him and Holla and the other guy that had it.
So he goes, no, I sold it. I'm like, man, you should have kept it. I said, especially as real estate prices have gone up. But yes, I think they'd be better served if Don was a 7th defenseman. Coughlin has not worked out. Coughlin just can't skate well enough to play here. He's got a great shot, but that's really all he's got. They'll probably need to find a spot for him somewhere. Right now, he's just a healthy extra every night. I'd actually like to see what Max Lajoie could do on a regular basis. But they need the other guys back. They need Teravainen on the ice as much as anything. How's your style guide?
Oh, it's been a lot of fun to keep. I can't believe I was taken off. Like, I just did this as a stupid thing. Like, I'm not even a style expert. I think that's the worst part. I'm like a fraud.
Doesn't matter.
But it's just fun. And I wanted to show how NHL players could showcase their personality more than they already do. And it's great to have the guys in on it. Like Zadorov put chirps at me on the Flames broadcast. And then you've got guys asking me if I can see their shoe collection. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do a story on that. It's just fun how that's taken off. I love showcasing style and kind of getting them into this competition that has nothing to do with actual hockey.
For me, and this is what I learned from talking to whether it's athletes or coaches, is that if you can get them talking about things that they don't talk about on a regular basis, like I will talk to Roy Williams about golf or his clothes that he used to wear before all the coaches wore sweatpants on the sideline, which is a travesty. I used to get him talking about fashion, and they're so much more relaxed when they're talking about stuff they don't have to feel like they have to protect somebody on.
Yes.
And if you can get athletes to talk about just some other things they're interested in, and you can connect that way, that's how you probably get better stuff about the sports that they play.
That's exactly what I was going for, Adam. You figured me out. I'm like, I have a little anxiety walking into this new room too. The Bruins too. I forgot what it was like. It's 30 guys. They're all like my uncle or something. They have the accents and they're like, what's up on the power play? And I'm just trying to get my question in, but they're like, oh, it's Sarah who does the little style guide. Let's talk to her. So it does help a lot.
Who's the most stylish player on the Bruins?
Oh, Pasternak. He won the whole thing last year. He's kind of had ups and downs. And I'm like, it's so funny. The stakes are high. They actually care about it. But I texted the Bruins PR the other day and was like, you guys haven't been taking pictures of Pasta. Is he actually okay? Because I want to grill him a little bit, but I want to make sure there's nothing going on. Because you've never done that. I'm like, why isn't he showing up? You never know what's going on in someone's personal life. So they're like, we appreciate you asking. No, he's fine. He's just not wearing the best suits these days, but he's back on top.
He's got a great personality. I love the Dunkin' Donuts commercials. I really do.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
phenomenal. Who is the best dressed Hurricane?
Oh my God.
And is he
Natchez.
still on this team?
Yeah, that's a good question. Natchez and Spetch. I've loved Spetch and Spetch's brothers' outfits. I feel like they share outfits. I don't know, like they go to the same places, but I like Natchez. Trocheck used to be really well dressed. Now
Yeah.
he's in New York and he gets to show that off too. So there's a few good guys on the Canes. Who else? Anderson always looks like he's in Harry Potter. Like he has the whole three-piece
He's
suits
a
and everything
Weasley.
down. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's awesome. I hope everything's going well. Podcast doing well. At BR_open ice, not on
You got
ice.
it.
So, Sara Civian, I appreciate your time.
course.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. I hope to see you soon at one point. Maybe you
I
come
know.
visit. I don't know. You're a busy person. I'm glad you're having a blast doing what you're doing. And I will bother you again if that's okay.
Please, you can bother me anytime, Adam.
All right. Sara, be well. Best to the whole Civian household.
Oh, even Rangoon?
Even Rangoon, yes. I'm allergic to cats, but I like pictures of cats and videos of cats.
Okay,
I
that's
don't
fair.
need to actually be around them.
That's fair. Thank you,
Thanks,
Adam.
Sara.
Thanks so much.